Hello, I'm Kimberly Underwood, Senior Editor at AFCEA International Signal Magazine. I'd like to welcome you to our Signal Media Executive Interview. I'm here today with Dana Barnes, Senior Vice President at Palo Alto Networks. Dana previously served as Microsoft's Vice President of State and Local Governments and lead operations for their National Security Group. Mr. Barnes is also a 15-year veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps, both active and reserve duty, and he is a 1994 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. Dana, welcome and thank you for your time today.
Hey, thank you, Kimberly. I'm glad to be here.
Dana, you recently joined Palo Alto Networks, I believe about 5 months ago. What led you to join the company and what are your initial observations?
That's a great question, Kimberly. I was really attracted to the people. I think people, that says a lot about a company, but it was also the innovation and Palo Alto Networks approach to critical infrastructure solutions. When they reached out to me, I really was thinking of Palo Alto Networks as a firewall company. It's kind of interesting. I think the industry sees them that way sometimes too. But over the past 5 months, I've seen that we are much more than that. We're really an end-to-end cybersecurity company, providing an integrated suite of solutions that leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning to make our customers more secure today than they were the day before. That, I think, has been one of the biggest learnings that I've had. And Palo Alto has been executing a core acquisition strategy over the past 3 years to strengthen its cybersecurity portfolio. But its ability to seamlessly integrate these capabilities into a homogeneous end-to-end solution has been impressive to me. I spoke earlier about the people, and I want to kind of come back to that for just a second, kind of in this 5-month period that I've had. When I came on board, it was a pretty tumultuous time. So I came on board back in September. And we had COVID going on. And then a little bit later, you think about December into January, the SolarWinds cyber attack, which was one of the largest cyber events in our nation's history. So a lot of things have been going on during this period. And what I've been able to see is a team of highly skilled, talented people who are committed to our nation's security and supporting the mission. And you mentioned in my intro that I was a Naval Academy grad and I served in the Marine Corps. Because of that, it was super important to me that I was part of a company that was committed to supporting the Defense Department and valued what our men and women in uniform do for us. It was very important. And you can see in the work that we're doing with our customers today, whether it be 5G, network modernization, security operations center work, across the services in the federal government, our people really get it and they want to bring the best security to our country. So, for me, that's kind of a little bit of what I learned and a little bit of, why I decided to join Palo Alto Networks.
Right, sure, thank you. And as you look to the federal government, more just broader than just the DoD, but to any kind of agency or department within the federal space, what advice would you offer to officials on kind of what to consider from a security perspective?
It's a great question. It's very complex because there's so many moving parts to it. But initially, what I would say is the government and its industry partners should focus on solutions which extend from the endpoint to the network to the data center and ultimately to the cloud, that true end-to-end perspective. And in doing so, the solutions have to support the mission every step along the way and be adaptable and resilient. Adaptability and resiliency are key. And so when you think about those things, you think about seamless integration, cross-domain security, and asset visibility as being something you have to get right out of the gate. One of the things that government can do, right now, I think it's very difficult for the federal government sometimes because you have a lot of existing infrastructure and you can't just rip and replace those things. But one of the things that they can do right now is focus on the supply chain. I think the government, DoD in particular, really must continue to ensure that its industry partners can provide a trusted supply chain. That's a key area that should always be top of mind. When we go beyond the supply chain, I know that government systems, I talked about it earlier, complex. You have cybersecurity teams that are inundated with data today, sometimes understaffed. And because of that, when you look at what DoD is doing, you see them going towards enterprise IT as a service so that they can kind of shift and address some of the challenges with personnel, maybe move some folks off of the day-to-day and get them more focused on the cyber space. I think that's key, especially as they look to manage their environments from the enterprise out to the warfighter at the tactical edge. And they're doing this today across multiple domains and a myriad of endpoints. And again, limited resources. So they're making that shift. I think it's actually the Air Force and the Army both have enterprise IT as a service efforts that are fairly large ongoing right now today. And I know that the Navy and the Marine Corps are looking at these programs as well. So, going forward, and the government realizes this, it's really about, and this kind of gets to where Palo Alto can help, Palo Alto Networks. It's really about creating large data lakes that allow us to watch patterns and behaviors. And then we leverage AI and machine learning to make our environments more secure. It's about finding partners who can provide a holistic view of the enterprise, both from the outside in as well as the inside out. Part of it is also looking at how code is developed and deployed. I think sometimes this area is a little bit overlooked. I remember my old days at my previous employer, we talked a lot about the software development lifecycle and how you bake security into everything. Well, you still need the ability to look at that code, determine how it's deployed so that you can ensure that your environments are safe. And all of these areas are major focal points for Palo Alto Networks as we work with our customers.
Right, and are there specific examples of things you've seen in the government where they've implemented some of these practices, such as looking at supply chain or code development or, end-to-end security?
I think there are definitely examples of where this is happening. If we look at kind of the 4 areas, so network modernization, we can talk about a big one today, 5G and zero trust. Also, we can look at things like just remote work solutions, which is huge right now when you think about COVID and how that's impacting us. And then finally, mission systems modernization. So if I were to kind of to start really with network modernization, we're seeing agencies really focus on programs which seek to prepare, and this is on the DoD side, against future conflicts where cyber operations are going to be at the core of everything that we do. So that's going to require modernization of the enterprise and tactical networks. And we're seeing, I mentioned earlier, the Air Force initiatives, the Army initiatives, they're really focused on enabling cross-domain utilization of data and securing access to the critical assets at scale. And I'll use the kind of the buzzword security, speed, and reliability, which is what they're really focused on. We are working with one of those defense agency, or I really should say, component, part of DoD, on security across base boundaries, as an example. And this is all about key infrastructure deployments, and how they secure them. And we're also working on some of DoD's ITAS pilot programs to modernize the network using our next generation firewall and our Cortex security operations services tools to modernize the approach to managing their complex network securely. So you're starting to see, as they're testing these things and moving out from a network modernization, pilots are being stood up across the Department of Defense to work with their industry partners to see how do we do this in preparation for the future. And an example of this, you can think about our Cortex XOR product. Right now, that's the only security orchestration, automation, and response platform which combines, the orchestration from a security perspective, the incident management, and interactive investigations to help those cyber teams and security teams across the incident lifecycle. And that particular capability is being leveraged in some of these pilots today. And I think the biggest thing for it is it allows folks to start to reduce the mean time to response. You think about that, how long does it take? So we're seeing the Department of Defense and federal agencies start to do that today when you think about network modernization and management. the big one I mentioned earlier, 5G and zero trust. Well, we're definitely seeing agencies across the federal government prepare for 5G connectivity. A lot of times you think about 5G and we've got our iPhones and our Android phones, and it's all about give me speed so I can, surf the web and do these types of things. But when you start to think about the promise of 5G now in a government scenario, the ability to stand up ad hoc networks leveraging 5G that are closed and private is huge. Uh, and you think about on the tactical layer, running small cells where you need them, bases, agency campuses, and in limited areas. That's becoming very, very, very important. But with that, when you start thinking about 5G, come new threat vectors, security vulnerabilities. Customers are now requiring application layer visibility and consistency, as they look at those mobile networks, and they have to prevent unauthorized command and control from being exploited. Particularly when you think about the myriad of connected devices that could be touching some of these 5G networks. So we're actually working with the Department of Defense, several different components of DoD on piloting 5G security, leveraging a suite of our own technology capabilities. First of all, we're focusing on our zero trust architecture with them. We are also leveraging our Cortex XOR capabilities. We are driving in some virtual firewalls that help with that. It's a nice fit within that 5G framework. And then we have our panorama tools. And so as we start to use these things, we're helping DoD learn how to leverage 5G networks in a secure manner. How do they manage it, and how do they secure it? On top of that, when you think about us as a 5G provider, it's all about the zero trust architecture. And we may talk about this a little bit later if there's time in this session, but I think that zero trust architecture is something that you're seeing the Department of Defense really take a strong look at. I was just talking to some senior leaders yesterday, and that was the bulk of the conversation. How do we get to zero trust? So we are seeing that happen in DoD as well. On the remote worker solutions, I mean, this was a big one. COVID hit, everybody went home, right? And so it's like, well, how do we ensure that our folks can work, but still be secure and protect the network? So, I look at the DoD and I see users with application developer environments supporting mission critical delivery. I mean, it's all across the map, and they needed a way to quickly do this. They came to us, some of the different commands, and we actually installed Prisma Access. So we were able to help them not only secure the endpoints, but also from a developer perspective, help them ensure that what they were working on was secure. And we were able to do this actually in a 2-day deployment with one of our customers. So they came and said, hey, this is what we need. 2 days later, we were able to secure them and have them working remotely. And so I think that's the power of technology, and you start to see what's happening in the environment and modernization of these networks. But to do things quickly, that's one of the most important things. Right. When we look at the last category that I would, in terms of what I'm seeing folks do, it's really around the mission system modernization. A lot of our government clients are prioritizing their funding to protect vulnerabilities within our critical infrastructure. That could be weapon systems, it can be in those networks, it can be networks that are doing more operational type things from a back end perspective. But you can see with the NDAA funding, a lot of the DoD leaders and legislatures are focused on our national security priorities. So they want resilience of essential and an essential deterrent from a warfighting perspective. So we've created a series of solutions that are being used today to address some of these challenges. One of them I think that I can talk about is where we're leveraging our Prisma Cloud compute tools like Twistlock as part of a DevSecOps scanning and compliance tool set for workloads that are moving into the cloud. And our solutions are available to all the DoD mission owners today. The tool set is especially suited for DoD, and it provides feature parity on and off prem. And I think that's a really big piece of what you're seeing, is that you're not going to have in the federal government a pure cloud shift. And so what we're seeing with a lot of our customers in the federal government is that they want the ability to have parity on-prem and in the cloud. And so you're seeing those types of things emerge as well.
Right, sure. And you mentioned some of Palo Alto Network's efforts in regard to DoD, including 5G security, enterprise as a service, or your ITAS pilot program with them, and zero trust initiatives. What makes DoD a unique customer, kind of in their national security role, I guess? And what do you see as DoD's specific needs in this unique role as it pertains to their network and cybersecurity?
Well, I think what makes the Department of Defense a unique customer is, the highly sensitive nature of what they do. So when you start to think about their mission, how they have to execute that mission and the conditions, you think about the enterprise, you think about the tactical edge, and you think about sometimes disconnected environments. They are very unique compared to, some of the other customers that we may work with. And because of that focus on mission and getting that information to the tactical edge securely, I think really the DoD is going to be looking at how do we enable full modernization of the DoD enterprise and the mission networks while securing the workloads using the cloud. Everybody, I think, agrees that the cloud is a great enabler of capabilities for DoD, but comes with some inherent security challenges as well. And so the DoD is looking at that. I think that they're going to need solutions that allow them to move seamlessly from private closed networks to open networks and back securely, and push that data back and forth, which kind of goes back to my comment earlier about being able to see everything from the outside in and the inside out. So I think that's one of the things that they really need, and they realize this, and they're working very diligently to address it. The other thing, secure remote access for critical application development. That's a big one for the most sensitive missions. So there are going to be people who are not sitting in the room behind the firewall. There are going to be people who are outside. And so how do you manage that? We believe that some of our capabilities like Prisma Access provide a foundation that can help the Department of Defense in that area. One of the big ones is security visibility and an automated response across the network. So when you start to think about the resources available to the Department of Defense, they want to put people at the tip of the spear, as many people as possible in the mission, doing the mission, which means you need to have the ability to have integrator partners and industry partners that can help you have that visibility, so you can get the most out of the airmen, the soldiers, the Marines that are on the ground. So that means there's going to be a much bigger reliance on and focus from the DoD, in my opinion, on artificial intelligence and machine learning, so that some of the things can bubble up to the top instead of your cyber workforce being inundated with data and not knowing where to start. It's very, very important that they have that machine learning and artificial intelligence capability as an additive to their cyber teams. We had talked about it. I'll bring it up again. It's a huge one. Supply chain security for those solutions going into DoD is critical, and supply chain is key in driving zero trust. You think about firewalls, and you think about layer 7 firewalls ready out of the box. You think about cloud enabled ZTA, hybrid visibility and runtime defense. These are critical when you start talking about the supply chain. And so if we look at what happened with SolarWinds, that would actually tie into supply chain. So very, very, very big. And then obviously we talked about securing code relative to the workloads and how we push things in and out of the environment.
Well, thank you. Just one more question. maybe taking kind of a broader view of, cybersecurity or the need for end-to-end security, kind of what are key takeaways you could share for officials and government workers to keep in mind when implementing a comprehensive cybersecurity plan?
I think, Kimberly, one of the things is zero trust architecture. Don't forget about monitoring. It's a future consideration of how to manage the zero trust environment. One of the most common mistakes regarding zero trust is the lack of a continuous monitoring strategy. Um, we know that environments can constantly change, which means that that zero trust deployment will change as well. The one thing we've learned about cybersecurity and networks is change is constant. New users, new systems, applications, and data are given. So it's crucial that a model is put into place to continuously monitor and evaluate the environment. It goes all the way back to what I learned about Palo Alto when I first came on board. Um, you know, Palo Alto is really trying to provide what I would call a learning portfolio of capabilities, meaning that every day you learn more about your environment that you can use to make it more secure. You learn about more things that are occurring around you. And this is incredibly huge when you think about zero trust and monitoring. So that's a big one. I can't stress it enough. I'll say it one more time. I think I've said it probably 4 times in this interview. Supply chain, supply chain, supply chain. It has to be secure. So if we were taking away anything from this discussion around a comprehensive cybersecurity plan, it's how are you looking at that supply chain? Who are your vendors, and how are they looking at that? I think the other thing when we start talking about it is maximize your investments. The government in general has made years and years and years of investments in technology, and ripping and replacing is very, very difficult and costly. So you don't necessarily want to rip and replace. So you don't have to start from scratch. In essence, you can leverage the infrastructure that's there today, but your goal has to be a model and approach which gets you to a zero trust enabled environment over time. So tools that can receive data from multiple endpoints, multiple vendors, and create that data lake that you can leverage and manage become very, very, very important. Because once you have that data lake and you have all of the data from different points, that's where machine learning and AI become incredibly powerful. And you can write applications on top of that data lake that work. And everything becomes much more of a software play versus a hardware play going forward. When you think about your OEMs, those OEMs need to be built around a total capability. So if you're picking firewall as an example, can your firewall provider do more than just provide firewalls? Is their technology integrated such that you actually have true cybersecurity versus point solutions across the board? In terms of maximizing those investments. Oftentimes, what you will see is that there are a lot of capabilities that the government already has today that maybe they just haven't turned on. And that's part of that maximizing your investments. Do we own something today that we can leverage that maybe we're not? They should be focused on that. And then they should assume that all aspects of the network are capable of becoming compromised. So the vendors that you partner with should bring up an approach to you of constantly updating your technology in real time with real information. Kind of going back to that statement I said about us being this kind of learning company, the platforms really learn and grow day by day by day. I think that that's what the government should be looking for going forward. And then I would be remiss if I didn't at least touch on 5G very, very quickly, because it is the new innovative thing that's coming to us. There will be common requirements for 5G, regardless of the mission across the federal government. So most folks are going to need ubiquitous mobility, right? And in the Defense Department in particular, they're looking at strategic mobility. And we've seen that with COVID-19. It's actually forced more employees across the government and in DoD to work remotely. So continuous mobility is going to be key for them. So we'll have to keep that in mind. Enhanced simulation and training is another one. Advanced modeling and multi-platform virtual systems are going to enable warfighters and other personnel to access those simulations real time. So this is what 5G is going to bring. Streamlining logistics training, better edge device connectivity, all of these things really tie in and are core takeaways when you're thinking about the cybersecurity plan. So, think about things, from our perspective, from a Palo Alto Networks perspective, what we look at is, can you see everything holistically across your entire environment and have things connected? That's got to be part of your cybersecurity plan. The one thing that I've learned being here at Palo Alto Networks is that the baseline core principles of cybersecurity we can all understand and then execute. And the key is just having a partner with you that can take you through everything, from end to end.
Right, sure. Well, I felt like you explained things very well, and I definitely learned something. Want to thank our listeners for joining us. For more information on the company, please visit paloaltonetworks.com/US/federal. And you can continue to access this executive interview at fcia.org. Thanks again for joining us, and have a good day.